Hello, good evening. Hello. Thank you very much. Lots of time to schmooze and tell war stories a little bit later. That's when we'll bring out the real food and you can enjoy yourself. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. We started this tradition 9 years ago. General Smith will be our ninth presenter, and it was really started by Lieutenant General, now deceased, Emo Gardner. He said, we ought to do an event in Washington that celebrates Olmsted scholars and their contribution to the services. And we hadn't thought about that, reaching out so much, and now we do, and I'm really thrilled with that. We do have a lot of VIPs, tribute to you. They've heard me before, General Smith, so I'm certain that's got nothing to do with me. But I would like I'll let our chairman of the board, Admiral Tidd, introduce our guest speaker tonight, but I'd like all the members of the board, the board of directors of the Olmsted Foundation, to stand up so you can know who they are. Okay, obviously. We also have, I'd like to recognize a few of our active duty flag officers here. We have, first of all, the Vice Chief of Space Operations, General, who's tried to retire for about 4 years in a row, D.T. Thompson, okay, D.T. A funny story about D.T., when the Space Force was created, I think to boldly go, I'm not positive, I got a call from a new Space Force lieutenant colonel, a female lieutenant colonel, and she said, we really want to have Space Force officers in the program. I said, we're already working on it. We're going to get them. And she said, however, we get to pick what language they study. I said, oh, interesting. And she said, they have to study a language that's used all the time in the space station. I said, okay. And then I said, you already have 2 Olmsted scholars. Do you know that? She said, no. And I said, do you know who General D.T. Thompson is? She goes, our Vice Chief of Space Operations? I said, yeah. And I said, where do you think he studied? And she said, it must have been Moscow. Okay, must have been Moscow. No, the Vice Chief of Space Operations allegedly studied in Linz, Austria, okay? As you know, the Austrians are really, they're all over that. Anyway, D.T., we also have, who broke out of the Pentagon tonight, Lieutenant General J4 of the Joint Staff, Leo Kaczynski. He's an Olmsted scholar, and he studied. And then Lieutenant General Mahoney, thank you so very much. We have the Dean of the Academic Board at West Point. Yeah. We never heard from the Navy. Anyway, not important. And anyway, so that's some of the VIPs. Our real VIPs are the Olmsted scholars, and in a moment I'll have the class of 2024, our newest program, newest group of scholars. My job is, in addition to trying to give you a few bad stand-up jokes, is to talk about the Olmsted Scholar Program. It was founded by General George Olmsted, and he gave us all our money. We've never raised money. He graduated in West Point 101 years ago in 1922. And the reason he had money to give, unlike me when I retired as a major general, I had no money. I also have 6 kids, so that, but he decided that in World War II, he was called back to active duty, and he repatriated all of American prisoners of war from the Asian theater. Over 11,000, and he didn't lose a single man or woman. So, and what his observation was, he said, U.S. military officers are incredibly good tactically. They have great strategic vision operationally, and they're completely ignorant of culture, especially other cultures. So he established this program, started out just 6 a year, 3 Army, 3 Navy, and 3 Air Force. Sorry, Marines, we didn't count you in initially when he established it, and he just paid for it out of pocket. Eventually, when he passed away, he gave the vast majority of his estate to the Olmsted Foundation. And what do? What are Olmsted scholars? We select the best warfighters we can find from all the services, okay? This is a leadership development program done at a foreign university, in a foreign culture, in the foreign language, and you have your family along with you. Why? We want our scholars to be immersed entirely in that culture. So later on, when they're lieutenant colonels, commanders, captains, colonels, they can really give back to the nation in their service because they understand these regions so very, very well. And now we pick about 22 scholars every year. We've sent scholars to 264 universities in 64 countries and in 44 different languages. We have our first scholar in Kazakhstan last year. He's studying Russian in Almaty because it's hard to find a place to study Russian. And now we have another scholar this year going to Tajikistan. So that's what we do. A young Marine named Cameron Marshall, he tried to describe it because everything is hard on the program. We make them study liberal arts, okay? A majority of our guys and gals are engineers. If you went to an academy, you have a Bachelor of Science. But General Olmsted said, no, they got to study liberal arts because then they'll get to understand the people. So a majority study liberal arts all over the world. I just visited 5 scholars in Europe. I got back last Wednesday. Often, I met with the presidents of the universities and the head of the faculty, and they all said, your scholar, his Russian, his Polish, his Romanian, it's perfect. And he, by far, or she, is our best student. I said, of course he or she is. We pay them to go to graduate school, okay? Come on, you know. And the other thing is, we also, in order to get full cultural immersion, and this may be hard for some of you to accept, we give them money to travel, okay? We give them money to travel in the region, first in their country, then in the region. And we don't ever know where the next conflict's going to arise, as we're witnessing now, but we always have 2 Olmsted scholars in Israel, as an example. 11 years ago, when I became CEO, I started pushing scholars further east out of the Western European universities. We've said we have 14 scholars who studied in either Kyiv or live in Ukraine. Fluent in Russian, fluent in Ukrainian. Colonel Angela Raber is now the SHAPE Intelligence Group Commander, and her responsibilities are the intelligence about Ukraine. And she studied in Kyiv. So that's just an example. But this young Marine major, because of all the challenges, he described it to the new classes, you've got to simply learn to love to hug the cactus, okay? And that's the way every little thing you got to do is so much harder, yet it's all done in a foreign language. So that's the purpose of our program. Will the class of 24 please stand up if you're here? I wanted him to stand so you can corner them afterwards. And again, I'm paying for the drinks. No problem there at all. And they'll tell you how they're doing. But we're really honored to have you here this evening. We're especially thrilled to have the new Marine Corps Commandant with us. He committed himself a year ago. He said, I may be ACMAC and I could be Commandant, but I'm coming. So thank you. Thank you. And I took you out of your office a little bit, which I know how busy you are now, sir. I really appreciate it. But that's what the Olmsted Scholar Program is. I did it in the dark ages, 1979 to 81, and it literally changed my life. And every Olmsted scholar will say it changes and their families. The immersion in the foreign culture, kids learn language so quickly. In 6 months, they're fluent. So we are continuing to do this as long as George's money holds up, and we manage that very carefully. But again, I want to thank you all. I'd like now to introduce the chairman of our board of directors, Admiral Kurt Tidd, who will introduce General Smith. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bruce. I am not going to rehash all the information that's in your brochure that provides the biography for General Smith. Suffice to say, as with all Marine Corps commandants, he is an extremely accomplished combat leader. He is an extremely accomplished leader within the far more challenging trenches found inside the Beltway. A couple of things that I would like to highlight, though. He is also a superbly gifted joint force officer. He understands how to bring the very best capabilities of all of the different elements of our armed forces and of our members of the interagency together to form cohesive teams. I'd like to say that he learned this from his time at when he was working with Southcom as the very, very brief period of time as the Marine Corps Forces South Commander, but actually he learned it much, much earlier than that. He did a tour in country in Caracas, Venezuela, as part of the country team there. Very difficult, very challenging assignment, but it brought him a perspective of working with the entire interagency. And that is the kind of gifted leader that our Marine Corps is fortunate to have right now. It could not, I think, be better led than the person who is now our 39th Commandant of the United States Marine Corps, General Eric Smith. Thank you very much for joining us.
I think I'm mic'd. All right. Thank you, sir. I think I'm mic'd off the lapel. Can you hear me in the back? So I don't. Okay, great. So a couple things. First, thank you, General Scott, Admiral Tidd. Thank you very, very much. Nadia, great to see you. Our former Surgeon General of the Joint Staff. So thanks. It's really good to see a lot of familiar faces here, and I would echo the comments about DT, my fellow member, my vice squad. You know, look, this is who we are. This is not a political kind of thing about holds or whatever, but he is supposed to be retired, but he said, I'll stay. Can you turn that volume down just a little bit? I just don't want to blow anybody's ears out. Thanks, because I will get loud in a minute. He stepped up, volunteered, put his life on hold, and he took a little leave, and he came right back. You know, because that's who we are. It's what we do. So DT, thanks, brother. It's really good to have you back. Representative of all that is good about our military. To all of you, thanks for letting me be here. What I won't do is run the clock out. I won't speak and then, I have time for half a question that I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just give you a couple thoughts, and then I'm going to turn it over to question and answer because, frankly, I find that more enjoyable. Hopefully you do too, because I want to know what's on your mind. Look, this is a room full of Olmsted scholars, right? And to be honest with you, I came only because this is the only way I'm going to be associated with an Olmsted scholar. Because, I went to Texas A&M, I have a B average in poli-sci, and look, I love y'all, but these are not my people. Because I could not do what you do. I have some language affinity, but I am not who you are. In fact, I had an aide, some of y'all may know him, Pat Schraff, part of the class with Pat. Pat his native language is German. He's 6'4", looks like a German. He's just, and not a lot of emotion going on there, and fluent in German. So he applied and was accepted to be an Olmsted scholar. And we sent him down to Columbia. And so he learns to speak. So I had to literally, because I speak Spanish, I spent some time in Venezuela, and I had to teach Pat how to slouch a little bit, and kind of do hands in the pocket, because he was like, buenos dias. And it was not, that's not going to work, Pat. You're going to have to, Guten Tag is okay, but that doesn't work when you translate to buenos dias. That makes it sound like you're ready to fight. So the cultural piece that General Scott spoke about is vitally important, because when you need access, basing, and overflow, look, we're, again, as we say, we're paying your tuition, and you're coming home. We need those relationships because they matter. They matter tremendously. I met this morning in my quarters with Hidai Zilberman, who's the attaché from Israel. We had very candid, frank, and difficult conversation. So you're helping America. You're going to have fun. It's great, but trust me, you're helping this country, and you're also representatives of our nation going forward. And in their eyes, you're the only Marine, the only airman, the only guardian, the only soldier, the only sailor or Coast Guardsmen, that they may ever actually know. So to them, you represent everything. So no pressure. What I thought I would briefly touch on is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think it actually is in perfect step with being an Olmsted Scholar, and that's campaigning. Campaigning is kind of the buzzword that seems to be coming back in vogue. It's never left for us as the naval force. I just literally talked to my shipmate, Admiral Franchetti, a couple hours ago. I was over talking to Capstone, and she and I tomorrow are going to fly with the First Sea Lord out to the Prince of Wales, British carrier, and we're going to sign an agreement on how we do interoperability. And I'm pretty excited about that. First Sea Lord, too. That's the coolest title of anybody. She's the First Sea Lord. He's not the CNO, he's the First Sea Lord. So we're going to do that. But our mission, Title 10, Section 8063, used to be 5063, but we added 3,000 to it, and nobody really knows why. But we did, but all of them got added 3,000. So 8063 says we'll provide combined arms teams for service with the fleet to seize or defend advanced naval bases and to conduct such land operations as may be required in the furtherance of a naval campaign. Last word, campaign. We're in it for the long haul. This is who we are. We're America. We're in it for the long haul. We're always in it for the long haul. Ask the Korean Peninsula. Ask Germany. Ask Japan. We're in it for the long haul. You can count on us. And so the campaigning piece is important because you campaign. I'll steal Admiral, I'm going to footnote appropriately so she gets credit, but I'm using it too. You campaign to a position of advantage so that when deterrence fails, you're prepared to strike. That's what campaigning is. You campaign to a position of advantage. You're part of that advantage as Olmsted Scholars. Campaigning requires multiple things. It requires, for us, very, very parochial, and parochial not a bad word, just my contribution to the golf bag, right? I'm probably, the driver is here, that would be the Army. I'm probably more like the 7-iron, right? We're kind of the utility player. Everybody's got their part to play, but it requires Marines, it requires lethality, and it requires mobility. And the mobility obviously comes from our work with our shipmates, that organic mobility, because obviously things are going, it's a challenge right now in the Middle East, again. And so what were the first two questions anybody asked? Where's the carrier strike groups? Where's the amphibious ready group, Marine Expeditionary Unit? All that power is and may be, in terms of the ARG, may be aggregating there to fulfill the objective that the President set out when he said to those who might interfere in Israel's declared war against Hamas, be careful. Meaning those who might cross other borders, be careful. Because we have that campaigning capability to do something about it should we choose. That's campaigning. But ideally, you set the stage long, long before that. Campaigning is more than activities and investments and operations, OAIs. It is about being there, being present, being with allies and partners, proving interoperability. You must be present to win. It's just like a door prize. Must be present to win. And you can't do that from home. You can't do that on an episodic basis because everybody's heard the term virtual presence is actual absence. You have to be there, and you must campaign into a position of advantage to gain access basing and overflight, to gain trust. And you have to look at it in the grand scope of history, not, well, what did President Duterte say? What will President Marcos say? It's the grand stroke, the time, the sweeping time of our relationships throughout the South China Sea. And our most excellent Japanese attachés are here tonight. And so my time in Japan taught me this as I would, and this is campaigning, right? When I was the commander of 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, I stood with General Yamazaki, who was then the chief of the Ground Defense Force, soon to be the chief of staff. And we would say, you know, literally standing in Okinawa at my headquarters, and he came to be our guest speaker at a birthday ball, our grandfathers literally fought to the death at the Shuri line, 75 years before that. And yet, because we campaigned, you cannot find a better ally in the Indo-Pacific than Japan. We have a rock-solid alliance with Japan and with Korea and with so many others. But when you can overcome that, because we respect each other's warrior culture, you can overcome anything. That's campaigning. It requires the resources. It requires the assets, the physical assets, and it requires, frankly, the connections to campaign. Because if you can't pick up the phone and call to one of the people that you now know, or will soon know for the class of 24, then you're not helping. You're not campaigning. And campaigning is vital for us, for our own safety, security, and ability to project power before the power is needed. Because, I would ask this, if I'm going out on a limb here, please hold up your hand if you have a child or a loved one serving in the military. Yeah, take a look around. A lot of hands up. We do too. We have a son who's serving as a Marine. I would prefer him to win without fighting, to steal something from Sun Tzu. That's what campaigning allows you to do. And if it fails, conventional deterrence fails, because we don't want to talk about the other kind of deterrence, because that's the ultimate fail-safe. But if campaigning fails, then you're in position to do something about it, to take action, to strike. And campaigning requires a capacity that allows you to be present globally. So it's expensive, it's challenging, and I hope you got me with Olmsted in the background so I can slow down. So yeah, that was back when I was talking to Olmsted Scholar. I'll work that under. That capacity is required, and it requires a sacrifice on our part as Americans, obviously with our tax dollars, but it also requires a little bit of patience, because the analogy I always use on campaigning is the same as I use for cooking. I don't do a lot of that. Tristan and I can tell you that. But when you want to make something, use the cake analogy. Again, 3.0 barely from Texas A&M. I did do it in 4 years, unlike our son who has a history degree from A&M. Took him 6 years. True statement. Our daughter, who went to University of Texas, got both her business degree and her MBA in the same 6 years. He's on the government dime. He's a Marine captain. She works for McKinsey, so she's the retirement plan. He's not so much. But you take the ingredients, right? You take the Space Force and the forward presence we have, whether it's PLEO or whether it's Super G, right? Super GEO. You take the Carrier Strike Group, the Amphibious Ready Group, the Army Multi-Domain Task Force. You take bomber tracks. You take all that and you blend it, right? That's the sugar and the milk, and you mix it all together and you put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 22 minutes. You can open the door in 15 minutes or in 7 minutes. All you're doing is letting the heat out. It takes 22 minutes for that to be what you want it to be. The question for campaigning is, do you have the strategic patience to wait for the results? Which are going to change because there's going to be a power outage. You're going to have bad eggs one day. But do you have the ability and the willingness to put this together and watch it grow? That's campaigning. And unless there are people out there who understand the culture, then I'm going to campaign ineffectively, because I'm going to say, well, we should just do this and just say this. Hey, I need a lieutenant colonel. I need a Pat Schraff to say, hey, sir, you don't want to say that here. Or, sir, I wouldn't do that here. That's not how you're going to be successful. Because what we'll do is we'll go to the CIA World Factbook, which is great, no offense, and we'll look at that. I know everything there is to know. It's right here in Wikipedia. That's not how you campaign. You campaign with a true cultural knowledge, which can only come from those who have lived it. So I feel pretty comfortable that I have a remote understanding of the Japanese culture. I hope I do. I have a decent working knowledge of Southcom, learned at the, on the knee of Admiral Tidd, General Kelly, and others down in Southcom, and from my own time living in Venezuela. Without you and this organization, we can't campaign. We can't. We need you. And that's why it's so important to do what you do. You can have a little fun too, but the payback is you got to be ready to step forward and tell us that won't work. And you got to be loud, right? For us, Pete Ellis in the 20s, well, late teens into the 20s, so he died in 23 down in Micronesia, built what would be our amphibious campaign in the Pacific in World War II. But people thought he was nuts when he was doing it, and we didn't really take all of it to heart, but he was a powerful voice. You have to be that. If you can't do that, you're in the wrong business. You have to step forward and say, hey, I'm an Olmsted scholar without, I'm an Olmsted scholar. There's two different ways to say that. But when you say, listen, I was an Olmsted scholar, and I can tell you, this is not going to work there. That's the ingredient to campaigning that I don't have. I can work the ships, I can work the Marines, I can work the training, all super vital. I can work the airplanes. General Mahoney's an F-35 pilot extraordinary. He can do that. I work with Admiral Franchetti for amphibs, the minimum number 31. I do all that. You knew I was going to say that. It comes out. It's like Trish will hate this. This is my wife Trish, smoking hot. It just boom, it comes right out. So she hates that when I do that, but I like it. And I'm standing here, and you're going to have to. I'm going to go get it when I get home. That's for sure. But I just need your skill set. So I'll stop belaboring that point, and tell you that campaigning is the thing that is foremost in my mind, because I'm trying to provide things for the joint force, position myself, campaign the force into a position of advantage, so we either don't have to fight, or so when deterrence fails, we're ready to strike and make it as short and sharp as humanly possible. That's my pitch. I want to talk to you about campaigning. What I'd rather do now is take your questions. You say, well, wow, that's not a great speech. I'm not here to give a speech. I'm here to provide my insights and thoughts to maybe illuminate why I'm thinking that. So when you're saying, well, what would the Joint Chiefs talk about this? Why would Smith say that? Well, because this is how he thinks. And then to take your questions and then turn those questions into hopefully more fulsome answers, as opposed to me talking for 39 minutes and giving you a chance for 1 minute. I don't like running the clock out. I think it's not good. There's no members here, so I say, over on the Hill, you can do that. You can run the clock out. Because they have a little yellow-red thing. You say, keep going, keep going. Hey, we're already red. My answer is, take that for the record. Non-attribution, right? I found non-attribution, non-retribution, two different things. So I'm ready for your questions. I'll be as pithy as I can, but I am from Texas, so I tend to be a little longer-winded than most would like. But I'll give you a straight answer. I don't do a filter. I'm going to tell you what I can. If it's not classified, I can tell you, and I'll tell you what I think. And I'm happy to attribute everything that I say. I'm not a Chatham House Rules guy. If I say it, you can say it. Or you can reprint it, do anything you want, and ask me some hard questions, please. Because I told Trish, hey, this is really tough. The stuff I do, it's really hard. I mean, it's really tough. It's not like you just go and cocktail circuit and get some poo-poos and people are nice to you. That never happens. So hook a brother up here and ask me some hard questions, because Trish thinks I'm working really hard, which is why I was not unpacking the last box that she unpacked after our move on Sunday night, I think we unpacked. So ready for your questions, and I'll end the speech part with thank you for being willing to step up. And for those who support the Olmsted program, thank you for doing that, because it's special. And I will tell you, it's a little bit like a crystal ornament. You can drop it, but only once. And once it's broken, it's broken. So it's vitally important that you do what you do and you represent us well. Because again, you're the only military officer, the only individual who many of the folks you're going to go see will ever see. And you represent all of us to them. That's a lot of pressure, but you're up to it. That's why it's such a hard screening process. So have fun, but please remember the purpose behind your current mission: to help me and the Joint Chiefs campaign to a position of advantage to prevent a war or win one quicker. Standing by for your questions.
If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you, either Sean on that side or I will. Sir.
Commandant, sir, thank you very much for the talk today. So two things. One is a thank you on behalf of the Joint Staff. So for the Marines you send, so we have a small team in the J4. We have Colonel Scott Beatty stand up, one of your outstanding Marines that's doing amazing things for us. One of the things he's done is worked on joint concept of contested logistics. Now the Marines talk about, you've talked about a lot. So just for the J4, I work Director of Logistics on the Joint Staff. just your plug from the Joint Force, what can we do better, for the future fight with contested logistics?
Yeah, so great question. Contested logistics, we have whistled past that graveyard for a long time. We build Iron Mountains, it's fine. The only way we're getting past that is we have to use technology. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. We have to do additive manufacturing and 3D printing. We have to own the tech data rights for everything that we buy. And no offense to anybody who's in industry, but I can print my own fan blades for an F-35 right now. I absolutely have the technical capability to do it. I can pre-stage high-end metals, and I can take with me the high-end printer or pre-stage it. And I can print my fan blades, but I don't own those tech data rights. That's insanity. That you can't do that. Now that's not, industry doesn't like to hear that, but I want to win. I'm mildly interested in the fact that industry wants X versus Y. I want to win. I have a son who wants to win. So pre-staging is the key, in my opinion. The EDCA sites in the Philippines are huge. We call it the Global Positioning Network. You have to pre-stage. We have phenomenal allies in Korea, in Japan, in Australia, the Philippines, that will allow us, because we have a lot of friends. China buys a couple friends, and then they're friends with Putin, who also has no friends, so he's friends with Xi Jinping. I mean, this is how this works. Or Bashar al-Assad. I mean, that particular circle runs together. We have friends who will allow us to place things, but usually not lethality. So, again, I need Marines, which means training, lethality, and mobility. Pre-staging lethality is problematic, because one, you have to protect it. Two, it can cause some diplomatic challenges. So pre-stage everything else. There's the technology that will buy that down to include expeditionary contracting, because if you give people a certain amount of money, they'll give you anything you want. I've found that kind of globally. Here's a bag of money. Other competitors do that better than we do. So one, it's expeditionary contracting, it's technology additive manufacturing, it's pre-staging, and then it's having enough of a robust transportation network. Jackie Van Ovost is stellar. She's the best transporter I've ever met. If you know Jackie Van Ovost, I mean, you don't want to joust with her in terms of transportation because she'll crush you. She needs the assets, both air and military sea lift command, which we're short on, to be able to do it in a pinch and move large sums of equipment to where they need to be to include a float fuel, which there's no silver lining to Red Hill, but it did cause us to put things afloat. So it is a compendium of events that are required for us to do contested logistics. And then obviously anything with counter-UAS, jamming, spoofing, to allow those assets to get, at least in the case of the Pacific, to the second island chain for then sub-dispersal on smaller craft where you spread the enemy adversary out, which is why what we do is a stand-in force to create a little bit of a dilemma for the adversary. So you can shoot at me or you can shoot at those supplies. Those supplies probably contain lethality, but I do too. So I'm going to be hitting you with a Tomahawk, or you can wait for that Tomahawk. So we're trying to provide that for you, as does the MDTF, but it's a compendium of things that are all required simultaneously, and we've whistled past that graveyard for far too long. That's my, not so wicked smart answer, but it's just wicked fact. Thanks.
Sir, thank you so much for being here tonight.
And congratulations on being an Olmsted Scholar.
Thank you, sir. So with that in mind, before I got this dream job of going to Hanoi, Vietnam, I had the lucky privilege of being the aide at SOCUR in Europe. And for that, I was privy to what exactly was being laid for campaigning, as you mentioned, with the current war in Ukraine. A lot of what SOCOM was interested in, of course, was how does this translate to the Pacific, with the pivot to Asia, and especially with where I'm going in Vietnam. Where do you see the Marine future? And of course, I'm Navy, so where do the Marines fit into campaigning in the Pacific in the future, sir?
Yeah, so within the Pacific, I mean, that is our bread and butter, that's our history, that's our home, that's where we belong. We still have a MEF, a Marine Expeditionary Force at Camp Lejeune, who's currently in the Middle East. That's the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, wherever they may end up, because we haven't announced anything yet. That's out of Camp Lejeune. So we can cover down on AFRICOM, EUCOM, and CENTCOM. For us, we now have 2/3 of our force, the first and third Marine Expeditionary Forces. That's in excess of 100,000 Marines. That's not true. That's with the total support it is. Warfighting element, that's about 75,000 Marines are dedicated to the Indo-Pacific. we'll just roughly say one in the north, well, one, number 3 in the north, number one in the south. We are the campaigning force. So we have now task organized, which is what our specialty is, and we have taken our expeditionary force and added to it Marine littoral regiments. Small, easily dispersed units that can go to strategically important places to execute distributed maritime operations, which contain sea denial and sea control. We're the sea denial guys. We've transformed some of our long-range artillery into missiles, so we can actually take out, let's just say, a Ren Hai or a Liu Yang, if required. We could, let's just say, take out an 86 bomber if China decides to attack one of the 5 people with whom we have mutual defense treaties, to include Japan. So that, to me, that campaigning, that is what we do. That's what we're built for. It's who we are. Low signature, highly mobile, better training to operate in smaller units, less than 100 at strategic points with high mobility, both afloat and ashore. That's how we contribute, because what we do is we cause an adversary to say, not today, because I don't know where all those things are, because they are low signature and they're highly mobile and they're lethal. And then we contribute to the joint kill web, because we can pass data in that ubiquitous data layer that General Thompson provides through space. We can do that through our MQ-9 Alpha extended ranges, through other aviation platforms that can pass that targeting data real time to the joint force. And we can enable a multi-domain task force who has longer range than we do. That's how we campaign. Because once we don't leave. That's the whole thing. We live inside the weapons engagement zone. We're not leaving. We are not leaving Japan. I mean, unless directed to do so by the Japanese government. But in fact, we've been, and our alliance is so strong, that's not happening. We've actually been told, please bring the 12th Littoral Regiment back to Japan, because we think there's value in that too. The Australians are fully supporting us in Darwin, and we'd like to even expand that. The Philippine government has added 5 EDCA sites, Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement sites within the Philippines, rock solid with the rocks. So that's our contribution to campaigning, because you don't know where we are. And like anything else, as President Biden said with regard to carrier strike groups and perhaps some RMU, to those who would meddle, be careful. That's the message that goes out to the PRC. That's how we campaign. Long answer, but I'm not excited about any of this. This is just kind of how I am all the time, because we do have capability, we do have game, we do have the ability to do this. Because you don't. We have a happy side. This is us. This is the side that the Japanese government gets to see, because we're great partners. We have the other side too. And we're not afraid to show that, because there's a saying out there that, and it's not false bravado, this is part of the dime, right? This is part of the tool we provide State Department, because it's true. There's a saying, nobody likes to fight, but somebody's got to know how. That's not a true statement. The Marines do like to fight. That's who we recruit. I mean, they come in, they want to. You got to pull them back. You need that. And you mess with the bull, you get the horns, a million statements from Texas, but that's a campaigning tool also, because that's who we recruit and how we train. Does that sort of answer? Thanks, ma'am. And you're going to have a blast in Hanoi. Key future in Vietnam. Key. Throw me a hard one. Yes, sir. And then yes, ma'am, I think. Or yes, sir. I couldn't see.
Hey, sir. Brendan Mulvaney, currently running the China Aerospace Studies Institute for the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you a hard question about China, but I think you're probably going to answer that. I got a way harder one. How are you fixing the Marine Corps to leverage the guys in this room, and the gals in this room?
Great
For example,
question.
my first job back, Chinese-speaking Cobra pilot, PhD in international relations. First job, logistics for the Iraqi Army.
Yep. Yeah. So as the assistant commandant, and you have the potential, if confirmed, next assistant commandant of the Marine Corps, we can't joke around anymore, because people get it, I'm not presuming anything, but we sometimes, ACMAC is the term for the assistant commandant, but sometimes we call Mo the NACMAC. He's the next ACMAC, we hope. So, and there's a different joke on, anyway. So as the assistant commandant, and I still hold it now, I've actually passed it to our G1, Jim Glenn, we have a thing called talent management. And people get, oh, it's leadership, not management. It's a terrible word. Whatever. I don't get too wrapped around a word, Axel, about words. Talent management is doing just what you described. How do I give an individual control, some control, over their career path? How do I give them that? If I have to give you orders, they're orders, and I win. I win every time, because this is how the Marine Corps works. I win. But before I give you orders, let's talk about your orders. Let's discuss where you want to go, what's better for you. And then, how do we track our PhD students? How do we track our Olmsted scholars? How do we track those who come out of, for example, Naval Postgraduate School with a degree in analysis? Well, they don't get promoted, because that's the rumor, right? You're dead end at major. Oh, you're going to be an attaché? Oh, well, that's a dead ender. How do I precept boards with the Secretary of the Navy so that you do have the same fighting chance of promotion to colonel or general officer? Now, we're pretty small. We're packing a grand total of 63 general officers, hoorah, in our headspace. That's all we have. But the precepts on the board are important. They're statutory boards, so I can't interfere with them, but I can help set precepts. And that's talent management, is tracking individuals like Pat Schraft who will come back and then be used in, not permanently, because we're too small to have a professional attaché corps. But when we do find someone like Chad Zabraja, if anyone knows Chad, who's a Beijing expert, right, spent time, how do we continue to get him promoted? Because, I mean, we wouldn't keep him, lived in Beijing, speaks Mandarin, we should get rid of him. How do we keep him on an individual basis so that he can still get promoted and he can still contribute? And then normally for most of us, we go back to our MOS, we do a billet, and then we come back out. How do we do that port and starboard B billet? That's my job as a talent manager, and it's now General Glenn's job. And then when assuming, if General Mo gets promoted, Mo Mahoney, then that's going to be his tasker from me, is please oversee that so we actually track individuals, because there's not that many of them. It's not that hard. And we've empowered the monitors, that's our branch managers, detailers. Just ask them what it takes to keep them. What do you want? What would it take to keep you? That's the simple starting question. And we're doing that. And just so you know, our retention rates right now, one, we made our recruiting goals, because if you want to be a Marine, you might make it, you might not, step up. I'm only interested if you really want to fight to be a Marine. And we made our numbers, we're not changing. Our retention goal is a 12-month goal. We're just entering about the middle of the third month of the 12-month. We're about 72% of our goal, because people want to stay, because I think they realize we are interested in having a conversation with you about your career. The old days, no offense to the old Marines, were 3 years there, then 3 years there, here's your orders, have a nice day. We're not doing that. You can't do that. Not in today's recruiting market or with the talent we have today. People won't accept that. They just want to know why. Why am I going there? So that's what we're doing. Long answer, but the most important question, because the individual Marine is the most important thing. And somebody's got to give me the hook when I get too long. Sir.
Good evening, sir. Captain
wait.
Connell, United States Marine Corps.
Yeah, first name.
Chandler.
So Trish, that's my wife Trish. Chandler was a platoon commander with Travis. He said he was okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's our son. So
Yeah.
Chandler I met him. He said, "Hey, I was a platoon commander with your son," and I'm like, I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop, but he said he did okay. So
Hadley is the better half, for the record.
Hadley's the way better half. Please.
So, sir, my first 3 years in the Marine Corps were spent in Okinawa in 3MEF working that problem set as a logistician. So I'm glad that we're finally getting the attention that the logistics side needs.
Yeah.
It's a terrifying concept to support that campaign.
Yes.
That being said, you talked about less than 100 Marine detachments providing lethality. When I was a second lieutenant, I was spun up to provide a 90-man logistics attachment in the Philippines. And the infantry side, that's maybe a captain or a major if you're providing actual weapons effects.
Right.
We have the weapons, we have the range to deliver those, but in a degraded environment where communication and command and control are denied, degraded, or just not available at all, are we willing and able to give weapons release authority to that captain or that major? And I think that's really the problem facing that theater, and I haven't seen a lot said about it. I recognize this is an unclassified environment, so I am curious, though, what the thought is on that right now.
So great question, and we discussed that this morning in a different forum. What I would say on both cyber effects, currently held by General Nakasone, and then lethal release authority held either by Admiral Localino or possibly higher. Will we release that? I don't know, because that'll be a decision to be made by POTUS whenever that may happen and whoever that might be. But I do know that we can't plan for, I'll never get this. You can't plan that way. You also can't plan for, I will always get that. So we have to have a plan that we would have at a certain level, at a certain range, release authority to strike if there was a war declared or someone was declared hostile. And then I also would, I won't say take issue, but I'll, with General Thompson sitting here, denied degraded environment, DDIL. There's a pretty robust architecture that is resilient, and we're trying to make it more resilient, that provides communication. So I have the ability for short periods of time to set up my own alternate PNT, Precision Navigation Timing Network, inside the WES when I am cut off, as General Saltzman is working and General Thompson are working to reestablish that layer, as the Navy's working to reestablish a different layer, and as frankly as the commercial sector is set to issue that PLEO sector or PLEO network, such as Starlink or Starshield. So I think we'll still have communications, though degraded, enough to pass that release authority. I really do. That is my belief. And then also that organization, those cyber authorities are the ones I'm actually more worried about. When I have a detachment embedded within me who can reach back and pass and have those authorities pass from General Nakasone down to a small unit, because in terms of the space layer, as General Thompson knows, there are things we need to do where proximity matters, to quote, enter the beam, if you will. That release authority, as long as I can reach back and touch it, and I believe I still will have, even though degraded, the ability to do so. So I'm actually pretty comfortable. I'm not ever comfortable at anything. It's like Bob Work used to say when I worked for him, Secretary of Work, people say, how you sleep at night? He goes, I sleep like a baby. Wake up crying every 2 hours. So I kind of feel that way sometimes, but I feel pretty comfortable about that, because necessity is the mother of all invention. And when required, if we're in that kind of conflict, I do think there'll be authorities passed to the appropriate level. Maybe not to a platoon commander, but that platoon commander is going to have different communications inside that bubble, if you will, up to a MLR commander or a task force commander. Good question. Sir.
So Colonel Cedric Lee, Marine Corps, Olmsted Scholar in Beijing, 2003, 2006, and former attaché, and currently at the National Security Council, right. Southeast Asia Director. So my question...
Oh my God, we actually got it right. We got you in the right building.
I don't know.
There you go.
We got lucky.
So
I'm very lucky.
my work here is done. No.
So,
General Mahoney
Commandant.
will be talking to you after.
I worked with General Mahoney before, but Commandant, so it's a great honor and a privilege. My question is about, you talked about campaigning. Mm-hmm. We talked about forward deployed Marines in the WES, standing forces.
Any WES, to include Task Force 61-2, yes, who's currently working in the WES inside Europe, and 51-5, who's operating inside a WES in the Middle East. So that whole concept is globally useful. Go ahead.
But I guess my question comes back to talking about forward deployed Marines, mm-hmm. if it's either as an attaché or a SCO, mm-hmm. or any other capacity as a forward deployed enabler, mm-hmm. That knows the cultural environment as Olmsteds do, as FAOs, to enable distributed operations. Like, what are your thoughts on how we either build structure or we enable this in the Marine Corps concept as, again, FAOs or Olmsteds or whoever they are that you identify through talent management as forward enablers to a follow-on stand-in force or a follow-on Marine force?
So great question. What I would say is true for us. I won't speak for the other services, but what I do know as a matter of jointness, communications are the responsibility of higher down to lower, not the other way around. So as the 3MEF commander should be reaching out to you, saying, I want to establish contact with you. Then you have your own, this is why you're a scholar. You have your mission, but they should be talking to you, right? How can I help you? What can you tell me? Teach me while you're in Beijing, while you're in Taiwan, while you're in Vietnam. And then the after part is how do we then assign you? And you don't have to be there full time, right? You're a Marine or any other service. Do I have the flexibility from a manpower perspective to wherever you are, can I pull you and attach you down to 3MEF? Now, that's a little bit weird because we're small, right? And we don't have the structure. We're 172,500. And at our biggest, we were 202,000. That was in the height of the wars. We'll stay around 172, 178, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we don't actually have structure that's, in my opinion, sufficient to do that. So what's my tether for you? So I can plug you back in, not when the war happens, but how do I get access to you episodically, periodically, call it what you will, so you can influence the J5 or the G5 to shape their plan? How do I get you, look, I have mobile deployed SIPR machines, DMDC at the TS level, that I could provide certain individuals to say, hey, take a look at this. That's not that hard. So that's how I would view us doing it. And that's the thing that, in fact, General Turner and I will talk, he's our PPNO, I'll talk tomorrow morning with General Turner, and we'll see how do we maybe do that so that we don't lose your skill. Because you're at the NSC, which is great, but when you're not at the NSC, how do I gain access to you? I don't think I have the structure to be able to attach you down to the MEF, because then I would actually consume you. You would go here, go to the MEF, and I would ride you like a circus pony, grind you into dust, and you get out. I have to be mindful that you join the Marine Corps to do MAGTAF things. Each service is individual and unique, but I need to let you do other things. You may want to go command. So I think the connectivity and the insertability into a MEF, some of it virtually, some of it in person, TAD, X number of weeks, I think that works. That's my belief, but that's something I got to talk to General Turner about. Does that sort of touch? Yes, sir. Okay, thanks. Yes, sir.
Sir, good evening.
How am I doing on time? 5 minutes. I got 5? Okay, I got 5 minutes.
Sir, good evening. My name is Edward Jeep. I'm a Olmsted scholar and a retired colonel. It's
I
good
might
to
know
see
you,
again.
Ed. How you doing, brother?
Fine, sir.
¿Cómo está todo?
Muy bien. Muchas
Me
gracias.
alegro. Me alegro. Hace un poco tiempo desde hemos hablado, ¿no?
Sí, señor.
Claro.
I'll deliver this question in English.
Wait. Before you go there, who speaks Spanish? Bring it in Spanish, brother.
Puedo
'cause there's only
hacerlo
a few
todo
of
en
us who are gonna
español.
know.
Muy
No, I'm
bien.
just kidding. Go ahead.
My question, it's kind of funny to say this, but it's really true that when I was a lieutenant and a captain, it was a simpler time in a certain way.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had the same conversation about space and about LEO and GEO and all that stuff. So when I was those ranks, any average captain in the O Club on a Friday, you could flip over a cocktail napkin and you could describe and diagram the operational concept, the MEB, the MU, the MEF, all that, the relationship with the Navy, all these things. So all the things that I'm hearing from you this evening are music to my ears. I've been out for 5 years, and we've been talking about that even 10, 15 years ago. So my question is today, because I honestly don't know the answer to this question, but today, right now, if we took your average captain and we flipped a cocktail napkin over, would he or she have the operational concepts, the linkages, all this conceptually and in place so that they could actually understand it and make it happen? Because there's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of things, but how close are we to getting back to the future's version of kind of the Al Gray Marine Corps where everybody knew all those things, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so close. And the answer today I would say is no. But what is being produced now is a capstone document. Because what we have is a lot of things. There's a lot of ideas in the kitchen, a lot of good stray trons, if you will, coming out of Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, a lot of excitement, a lot of things being generated by experimentation. What we do not have that is being worked now by Marine Corps Warfighting Lab and Marine Corps Combat Development Command, that's Lieutenant General Heckel and Brigadier General Ellison, is a capstone concept that pulls all of it together. I hate to say, the Marine Corps terminology, we would say Barney style, just very basic, that explains that cocktail napkin. What is it? Why does it exist? What does it do? Because the SIF, the stand-in force, it doesn't exist all by itself. We've actually been the SIF since the end of World War II. And people say, well, you got to be careful. can't live inside a weapons engagement zone. That's crazy talk. Nobody says that about Marines that go to Stuttgart. Last time I checked, Russia still had nukes. So that would be inside the weapons engagement zone. So I discount that theory. It's just more logistically challenging in the Pacific. But that capstone concept, which is being worked now, I think will do just that, like MCDP-1, Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 1, Warfighting, which is our ethos. It's who we are. It talks about the ability to do trust tactics. It talks about, warfighting. Everybody talks about warfighting. What does it do? So that capstone concept, when it comes out, which should be in the spring, if everybody stays on time, then I think that'll do, Ed, what you're talking about for all of us. That'll bring all the concepts together and show me line and block chart, if you will. Where do they fit in the furtherance of distributed maritime operations? Because first and foremost, we are naval. Born naval, we're going to die naval. I'll stop. I don't go anywhere without my shipmate. Second, we're joint. I was birthed under Goldwater Nichols. I don't need to be told to be joint. I got commissioned 87, Goldwater Nichols 86, poof. I don't know anything else. First Gulf War, we were just joint. I don't know anything else. And then allies and partners. And that's the piece that'll be hardest, I think, Ed, because we still default to secret no form, but that's a training problem. It's safe, right? You don't get in trouble. Secret no form. We have to take some risks here with allies and partners to release information that they probably already have, to be honest with you, in the ubiquitous communications world that's out there, because everybody can see what everybody can see. But I think the capstone concept will do just what you asked, because the answer to your question is I don't think so across the Corps. And I would say that's also true for the Joint Force. That's why Joint Warfighting Concept 3.0 is so important, that the Joint Force understands what lines of effort we're having. And that'll require some work too at our PME institutions to make sure that year after year after year we understand JWC 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And I think that's coming, but the bread and butter is always education. And it's then educating inside the unit, and that happens at professional PME schools, and then has to be taken down to units so that that PME is distributed. Does that sort of touch on it, Ed? Absolutely. Yeah. De nada. Que bien verte.
Any more final questions? One more question if you have it.
Especially if it's an easy one.
You need one, sir. Colonel Stu Welch, Olmsted Scholar, 2011 to 2013 in Tel Aviv.
Stu, how are you?
Discussion with the Israeli bat this morning. Can you just give us sort of the thumbnail sketch of the situation in Gaza,
Yeah.
and how worried are the Israelis that the Lebanese Hezbollah will open up the northern front?
Sure. Talking at the unclassified level?
Yes, sir.
So let me start with this, and this is, you can't go wrong saying what the president or the SecDef's already said. And that was a joke, but this next part's not. We stand resolutely with Israel. All stop. There's no moral equivalency to purposeful, targeted murder of children. All stop. So we talked about that this morning. The situation in Gaza is very, very difficult. The Israelis would tell you, and this is just reporting what I hear, there is no actual legal document that says you must provide A, B, and C. And, as you know from being there, there's physically valves, there's some old piping that you have to turn on to get water moving, which you can't do when you're being shot at by the same people who claim that they're not getting the aid. And I'm talking about Hamas. The same people blocking the gates to the south are the same people saying, well, we can't get out, right? Because you're blocking the gates to the south. So there's no equivalency here for Hamas. We talked about that. There's concern to the north for sure. Lebanese Hezbollah, who's 10 times larger than Hamas. And frankly, we'll have to see where the tunnel fight goes, because I'm sure there's a lot of stockpiles in there. And how long do they last for those fighters? But my assessment is that the Israelis just suffered what would be the equivalent of 40,000 dead for us, and they have blood in their eye, and they're not letting that go until that organization is defeated. Just like we said, a just and lasting defeat for ISIS, ISIS didn't put children in cages and burn them. Hamas burned children. They did. All stop. They did. So I think this is going to be really, really difficult. It'll be heart-wrenching to watch humanitarian disasters unfold. And then you'll have to juxtapose that against these photos from a kibbutz and decide, do you want to see this again? Nobody wants to see this, but who's in charge here? Hamas is the governing body of Gaza. That's a fact. The Lebanese-Hezbollah peace, it would be extremely unwise. I hope that doesn't happen. And again, that's where President Biden was very clear. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups and potentially a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And when he says, be careful, no one should mistake what that meaning is. I take you back to fighter pilots. They like to fight. Marines, they want to get into it. You got to hold them back. But that force package exists for one reason. It's called a carrier strike group for a reason. Admiral Tidd knows that better than anyone. They have robust capabilities. People should be careful. I'll just leave it at that. All right.
General Smith, on behalf of all of the Olmsted Scholars and our guests, I can't thank you enough for your presentation this evening. Just so candid, so thoughtful, and what I really appreciate is you understand the role that culture plays with all of our forces. And the thing we never know is where the next fight's going to be. And that's why we send them to all of these universities all over the world. So when the crisis comes, we have folks to put there of all services. I'd like Admiral Tidd to join me up here. We're going to present you with 2 less than $16 worth of gifts, okay? I've been told, many staffs have called me and said, now what's it worth? And anyway, I'd like to present to you, this is our coin. It's purple because we are joint as well.
Amen.
And those are the educational star, which we hope they get, and hopefully lead to flag officer rank someday. And by the way, we do very well
Yes,
in
sir.
promotion of flag rank. Here we have the back of our coin. I'm really proud, although DT's really screwed me up here. I have all the 5 crests of everyone who can participate. And then we accepted the Space Force. So I'm going to have to redesign the coin.
Just put the Marine Corps right in the middle, and then put DT right there. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, well, you notice the Army's on the top.
I
right?
noticed that. My father was an Army officer, so I'm okay with that.
Anyway, I hope you take this with you. Thank you so very much. A
Thank
really
you very
great
much.
presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me do, that's the assistant commandant, because I sure have my commandant ones.
Yeah, this will do. Same guy.
General Smith, on behalf of all of the Olmsted Scholars, since the program was first established, I would like to present you with a copy. This is a Register of Scholars. It is a compendium of all of the officers we've had. If you're ever curious, you can go back and look at some of the very, very first Marines who were Olmsted Scholars, and you'll be surprised, I suspect, at some of the faces that you see in there and realize they didn't do too badly.
They didn't do badly at all.
There's also some great history in here about General Olmsted, the history of the foundation, and the history of the program as it's evolved over the years. But it is not $16 worth of in dollar value, but it is priceless in terms of the history of our program. And we thank you very much for taking the time in one of your very, very first opportunities to engage as the Commandant of the Marine Corps. We're very
Thanks,
proud
Kurt.
of you.
Thanks, Kurt. I really appreciate that. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
You are an Olmsted.
I am. I'm trying to get that. So, all right.
Focus on the good-looking guy, not the bald ones, okay?
Thanks. Oh. Thanks, Sergeant Woodard. All right. We're all good? Thank you.
Now
Thank you.
we're going to open up the bar again, and there's a lot of food out there. And if the Commandant has a few moments, I'm certain he'd be delighted to talk to you. Thank you all for coming. It's really been a special. Thank you.